Welcome to RevMD, the podcast all about medical billing. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Signorelli. Join us as we break down the ins and outs of medical billing, discuss the latest trends, and also share insights to help you and your practice navigate the world of healthcare finances. Hey everyone! This week, we're going to talk about one of the most common things we are seeing in our practice. And while I've touched on these topics before, I cannot stress enough about how common eligibility issues are, how common front desk training is. And so today we're going to spend some time going over all of those things so that everybody recognizes things you can put into place today, this week, with your staff in order to improve your revenue and cash flow in your practice. So this week, we're talking about how to train your front desk staff to master insurance eligibility and upfront patient collections. I cannot stress, I know I keep saying this enough, how much of a critical area this is for any practice because it directly affects your revenue and cash flow. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't get this corrected on the front end, your patient AR is going to be an issue. You're going to be seeing some patients at least for free. And so we're going to go through a step-by-step approach of what your team needs to know so that they can ensure their own success. I highly, highly encourage sharing this with your own staff, having them share it with the front desk individuals in your practice so that everybody can be on the same page in terms of the steps that are necessary in order to really ensure that you're collecting the necessary money up front and that you're getting all of the correct information regarding a patient's insurance so that all of that can be used for correct billing the first time. I will say I oftentimes see practices with heavy accounts receivable, whether that's insurance or patient, and it really stems from the eligibility process and that front end process. Again, billing starts the moment that patient calls for a patient appointment. So that's when billing starts. So we're going to go through the 4 steps that are really important for your front office staff to understand and comprehend so that everybody can be on the same page about how important it is to have a really good eligibility process and also have a really good patient collection process. Because these go hand in hand, right? Because when you do eligibility on a patient, you are finding out how much that patient owes with a copay or deductible, and then you can collect that. And I think the key is those patients should not be left behind the doors, go behind the scenes to see the physician without these things being done. So let's start with step 1. Let's talk about training on insurance basics so that everyone on the front office staff understands kind of key terms that they can explain to patients and that they can apply in their knowledge in order to understand what they should be collecting for a patient. So when a patient calls, right, and those patients are scheduling an appointment, obviously it's important to collect that insurance information, collect really the details behind that, right? Who's the carrier, subscriber information, who is the person that holds the policy, right? That may be a spouse, that may be a parent, but who actually holds the policy is really important. And then checking, obviously, if that carrier is in network with the office. It's really important to ask questions to the patients about primary or secondary insurance, and really important to check that even if you have the carrier in network, you really want to make sure that the plan is in network. And all of that is done through a solid eligibility process. That eligibility process can really be something that is done through the payer portals, and we'll talk about that here on step 2. But back to step 1, where we're really thinking about that education. It's really important for the front staff to understand that eligibility is that verification process of active coverage, of active insurance, and really making sure that that carrier, that provider, is in network with the office. Next, the staff really need to understand several key terms to make sure that they can explain these key terms to patients so that the patients understand when they are being asked to pay for a copay or they're being asked to pay a deductible, what that information is, how to get that number, and why they're having to pay that before they're seeing the physician. So first, deductibles, right? Let's talk about that. Again, these are not things we're taught in medical school. And if this is something that you're sharing with your front office staff, it's really important for everybody to understand. And we do also have a patient AR pamphlet that we're happy to send to folks if you are looking for that. It's a pamphlet that you can print in your office and hand to patients. If you are interested in that, shoot us an email at info@natrevmd.com, natrevmd.com. And also, we do have a 8-module course all around medical billing. And this is a way that both you and your front office staff can take this course and really learn everything from the claims process to front office training to managing your accounts receivable. And it also comes with multiple policies and procedures and documents that you can edit and put into your practice. So head over to our website, natrevmd.com, and you can sign up for the course. It is on the school platform. So head on over to our website and it'll take you to that link. All right, back to those insurance basic training. So again, important to know these 4 terms, and that's deductibles, co-pays, co-insurance, and out-of-pocket max. So deductibles, of course, are the amount a patient must pay out of pocket before their insurance begins to cover services. So, for example, if a patient has a $1,000 deductible and they haven't paid anything toward it yet, they are responsible for the full cost of that visit until that deductible is met. And so it's really important to make sure staff understand that they're checking the patient's deductible and explaining to that in simple terms when the patient is being seen, and you're asking for that before they can go back and see the physician. Most deductibles will reset in January, which is why patient AR and even revenue and cash flow can be down those first couple months of the year because deductibles are all being reset. And if you're not collecting that up front, then you're having to wait until the claim kicks back. You're waiting for that deductible to be shown on the EOB, and then you're sending out patient statements. That could be 60 days of waiting for that money. So huge importance to get that collected up front. All right, copays. A copay, right, is that fixed amount that a patient pays for a specific service, such as $30 for a primary care visit, for example. This is usually required, again, at that time of service. And this is going to be regardless of whether or not the deductible has been met. So your staff need to be trained to always ask for the copay when they're checking the patient in, and oftentimes it's on the back of their insurance card. The next one to really make sure that everyone understands, and this one is a little confusing, is co-insurance. So that is that percentage of the cost of a service that a patient must pay after the deductible is met. So for example, if a patient has a 20% co-insurance for a $200 service, they're going to have to pay $40, and then the insurance would cover the rest. So again, really important to understand this piece so that patients understand, they have the educational material maybe either handed to them like a pamphlet or explained to them from the front office staff, so that when they get these invoices before they're seeing the physician, they're like, okay, yes, I understand. I get that I, as the patient, have a contract with the payer, and within that contract, these are the numbers I'm responsible for paying. Next is out-of-pocket maximum. So this is the most a patient will have to pay in a year for covered services. Once that limit is reached, the insurance company then covers 100% of the remaining cost. Again, we'll talk next about eligibility and how you find out these amounts so that your staff have the most updated versions. And do remember that sometimes these numbers aren't perfect in the eligibility checks, but it is important to at least get a rough idea. And again, correct for that. If you do see issues, going to the payer portals or calling the insurance is another place where you can really firm up the accurate information. Because usually the payer portals or calling the insurance directly do have the most updated and accurate information. Now, here's a training tip. With the staff, I think it's really important to have a policy and procedure, also have an opportunity to either have something recorded or real world examples, and even a script that reinforces these concepts with the front office staff. So whether it's a pamphlet, a script, or a combination of both, these are the things that patients really need to understand, and they're going to be more likely to pay their invoices, certainly up front, if they understand these things. So next, step 2 we really want to make sure that there is a clear process for eligibility verification. So now that they understand kind of the key terms that they're going to have to look for when they do eligibility, right? Because you can see those fees, those amounts when you do an eligibility check. Now, where you find that information depends on your software, your billing software. It depends on the payer. So you're going to want to have specific instructions by payer, or at least have an understanding of which payers you may need to go directly to the portal instead of using your billing software. So obviously, when you're checking eligibility, that assumes that you've gathered all that necessary information when you schedule the patient. So you have the insurance information, you have the patient's demographics, their date of birth, all of the things that you need in order to check eligibility. It's ideal to do eligibility checks a couple days ahead of time, 2-3 days ahead of time before the patient's appointment. And that should just be a process that's in a checklist that on Wednesday, you're checking Friday's appointments, or on Monday, even you're checking for Friday's appointments to give you time to resolve any issues. So if you're checking Friday's appointments on a Monday and you first check the eligibility through your billing software, that's great. But they're not always going to give you 100% of the details. And typically they'll flag when something isn't accurate or something's wrong. I think the biggest mistake we see is that nobody's actually taking actions on those failures, right? They take the 80% that worked and they move on. So it's really important that you have to focus on the 20% of failures, right? I'm making that number up, but on the ones that fail so that you can resolve those issues. And oftentimes that's going to be the manual pain in the rear end part, or going and signing onto the payer portal. You're checking the payer portals, you're calling the patient, you're checking with the patient if the insurance potentially changed, or if the subscriber information was wrong, or even calling the insurance directly. Lots of things that can occur in order to resolve these issues. And again, none of these are the fun things to do. But if you don't fix them, then what happens is the billing company submits the claim to the wrong place. You're going to get a denial in, say, 15 to 45 days. Then now you're dealing with the failures on the back end, and you may not be able to reach that patient and get it corrected for. And you've missed an opportunity to then get the insurance copays or deductibles collected up front. So lost opportunity. So again, utilizing those payer portals or direct calls to the insurance is really, really important. And another thing is you really want to make sure that you're documenting all of these things within the EMR, within the billing software, so that if you do make a change, that change is noted, the updated subscriber information, the updated eligibility information, they are all there. And if you do have an HMO, want to make sure that any sort of prior authorization or referrals that are necessary are going to be completed and done and in the system for the billing team. So really important to have a step-by-step checklist for this. Make sure that the team is trained on this and make sure that they understand what their role is and on what days they have to do these things. I truly believe if you put into place a policy, you train and get staff to understand where they need to be doing these things and when, they are going to be more successful and less frustrated, which oftentimes leads to better job satisfaction. So again, we do have some of these things drafted already as part of our medical billing course. So head on over to our website at natrevmd.com and go to resources and go to billing course, and you'll be able to head straight over to the school platform to sign up. Now, the next step, step 3, is educating patients and setting those expectations. So it's really important to have a financial contract that you're providing to your patients when they come and start with the practice so that they understand their own financial responsibilities. And you are also communicating their responsibilities in multiple different checkpoints. So for example, when the patients are doing their pre-appointment, you need to make sure that they're getting a message before their appointment that they are going to be expected to pay any copays and deductibles and to be prepared for that. You can obviously send that by email or text or phone call, but you really just want to make sure that they know that, hey, we're doing eligibility. Any costs that are needed to be paid up front, such as X, Y, and Z, deductibles, copays, etc., are going to be something that you can communicate to them ahead of time. You can always offer to them to reschedule should they not want to provide payment, but outline the fact that yes, they do need to pay. Yes, it needs to be done up front. And even something in there or in your financial contract that talks about financial responsibility being the contract that they, the patient, have with the carrier is also another really nice way to do it. Again, another time point to explain that financial responsibility is going to be at check-in. So when the patient arrives, the staff should be prepared to explain why they need to collect a copay or deductible. And again, you can use a simple script that allows the staff to explain to the patient something like, your insurance requires a $50 copay for today's visit. This goes towards the total cost of your care. We're going to be collecting that today prior to you seeing the physician. Obviously, you want to make sure that they have questions answered. And, if they ever say anything like, I've never had to pay this before, or I don't have my wallet with me, we want to make sure that your staff have a way to respond to this and make sure that they can, respond in a simple way or get a manager on site if necessary. So some things that they could say are, I understand policies can change from year to year. We accept various payment methods, and you can also pay online if that's more convenient for you. So we give lots of options and could even send them a payment link if for some reason a wallet is missing. I think everybody has a card on file at this point, or in your head even with the days of Amazon. So hopefully this is something that the more your patients get used to having that communication upfront, they know their expectations walking in. Now, step 4 is really about holding staff accountable and monitoring performance. So it's really important to set clear goals with the staff and make sure that the front desk team recognizes that the copays and deductibles are a big part of your ability to keep the doors open, right? And that helps keep patient AR down. It helps keeps cash flow even, and could even have some sort of game or metric where you can look at the number of eligibility verifications that were completed, look at the percentage of that by staff member, provide those metrics to your staff, or even set up some sort of reward if you get, say, over 95% of eligibility checks resolved on a daily basis for X days. Obviously, you can implement a tracking system. So oftentimes, either a simple spreadsheet or your practice management software should hopefully be able to provide you some level of metrics that talk about eligibilities and make sure that those are being done. I really like the idea of a regular huddle. So whether that's daily, depending on the size of your practice, or weekly, to share metrics, to share KPIs or things that you are working on is really important, and can always, provide formal feedback to employees that continuously struggle with a specific area of their job duty, including this, because this is one of the most important things for cash flow in your practice. Eligibility and collecting patient AR upfront is really key. Obviously, positive reinforcement, right? Celebrate success. If we've got staff members that are consistently doing this on a regular basis, is there a way to reward those individuals, regardless of how small that may be? It does feel really good to get rewarded for being able to help the practice stay successful. Obviously, having, those policies and procedures, or even a visual workflow or checklist is really key to help your staff stay accountable, because we know how front office can be, right? They're getting thrown a million different things, and it can get distracting up there. And so to have a simple checklist to refer to check things off and say, yep, today I've done these 4 things, or on Mondays I do this, and Tuesdays I do that, and Wednesdays I do that, is really going to help everyone be very successful. Training your front desk staff, as I've said before, on both eligibility and upfront collections, as well as the terms that go along with this, is just going to make everybody happier. It's going to make you feel less stressed. It's going to make revenue feel better and more consistent, and really going to pay off in the long run. Obviously, it's really important to not just train once and hope for the best, but really create this culture of continuous learning, right? Accountability and clear communication, and also empowering your team with the right tools and knowledge and support so that you're setting everybody up for success. All right. Thanks for joining this week on the NatRevMD podcast. If you got through the podcast today, please also know that we have just published our first book, Thrive. It is on Amazon, and this is really something that goes over the top 10 ways to boost your practice's revenue. So again, Thrive, top 10 ways to boost your practice's revenue, by me, Dr. Heather Signorelli. Go check it out and order it on Amazon and leave us a review. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Thanks so much for listening.